This is Ty, Metalhead Weatherman. Hopefully, you guys have had a good Thursday. Finally, towards the end of the week, which I honestly thought should already been over, but anyway, enough rambling about that. The tropics continue to be on fire, and now here, and also for tomorrow, there's two words I normally do not like to put together, but based off the indications that I've had over the last few days and the way things have trended, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Friday, if everything comes to fruition as what I've been seeing, or as far as to what I've been seeing, it looks like we're gonna have that tornado outbreak kind of situation going. We have a potential tornado outbreak on our hands. I hate saying that. I don't try to. This channel's not gonna be one that tries to monger fear or say say something like that in the title for clickbait, but this looks like the real thing. So we'll go into detail about that, and we'll also talk about some ways to prepare yourself in the event that that does go down, how you can protect yourself and maybe your property as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the tropics first. That'll be what the first half of this video is about, and then we will go over to the severe weather threat on the other half of the video. So whatever part pertains to you, you can skip right ahead to it. That being said, here we are looking at the 5-day tropical outlook. We're still looking at our area in the Caribbean, and then we have a new area just where a post-tropical cyclone Martin is. Martin's somewhere off around this way, and of course still isn't a threat to land. We aren't even going to really look at the spaghetti models with that. Besides, we're already past the final advisory on Martin for the National Hurricane Center. But this area is one area that we're interested in. Here is a tropical depression, Lisa, now as it's heading into the Yucatan here. Although ultimately it will be pushed back to the south and into Mexico one more time after our cold front that will be causing the severe weather moves through. Go ahead and take a look at everything on satellite. So far, nothing is really standing out of anything that we're looking at over here. This is post-tropical cyclone Martin. Here's our next area of interest right here. Here's Lisa, and here's our area in the Caribbean that we're watching really close. Looks like we have some wind shear off the wake of Martin here. This is also going to probably affect this piece of energy from really starting to develop. I think we're going to probably be looking at another 5 to 10 days before we see any real signs of development from this right now, as the wind pattern is just unfavorable right now. That being said, let's go ahead and look at cyclocane here. We know the paths for Martin. That's Martin right there. And we know Lisa is going to be heading back into Mexico. Here's our final advisory on Martin, by the way, right here. Still is a post-tropical hurricane, might I add, but no threat to land at this time. Doesn't look like it's going to be a threat to land. I don't even think it makes it to the UK or any parts of Northern Europe, so no issues there. Lisa, as it's continuing to go over southwestern Mexico here, or southeastern Mexico, excuse me, looks like it's just going to continue to dump rain on that region, but beyond that, there's no real great threat other than that, so to speak. So this area over here that we're talking about, this next big area of interest that's in the wake of Martin, has a 10% chance of developing within the next 5 days. Not a great chance, but we'll go ahead and just keep an eye on that in the coming days. And then, of course, there's our other system over here that's hanging out towards Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. So now that we've gone over all these things, I'm going to go ahead and close these out, try to see if there's any way I can keep the computer nice and speedy here. So, that being said, let's get to the severe weather threat side of things. We have a diminishing marginal and slight risk area now. Severe weather is still possible tonight, but it's going to be in the overnight hours. The problem with this threat and why it's going to be weaker is because we're not going to be in those peak daytime hours. We're not going to have that increased instability that you would get from sunlight. A lot of that's going to be gone by about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. By about 3 or 4 o'clock is when we would be expecting these storms to really start to kick in. So the threat of damaging winds and hail are still there, but the tornado threat's going to be minimal tonight, thankfully, because that would be a nightmare scenario to have storms popping off at about 1 or 2 in the morning. But there is a marginal threat for it still, especially towards the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles here. We look at the wind threat, and of course it's pretty much the same deal, but this does stretch a little bit further to the north, and the hail threat's pretty much the same. So of course we're looking towards central Kansas, southeastern Nebraska, and maybe even southwestern Iowa. We can't rule out the potential for a severe storm with wind and hail. But the tornado threat is definitely looking like it's going to stay pretty well to the south here. We'll have to see how this line of storm behaves throughout the day. But this of course is not our main event. Our main event is tomorrow, where we have our enhanced risk issued, and it looks like they've also stretched this out further to the east. We now have Shreveport in that enhanced risk as well. We have Lufkin, Texas as well. And we're starting to even look at that slight risk and marginal risk stretch a little further to the east as well. We're starting to see areas towards the Mississippi River Valley involved for the severe weather threat as well. And our storm threat even stretches as far north as Kansas City, even areas to the north of that we'll have to watch closely. I do think this area off to the west here is going to be associated more with our morning threat, and as we get into the afternoon, our threat increases more and more to the south and east here. So let's go ahead and look at the hazard types, and this is a big concern right here, is the 30% wind threat we have. That's covering Austin, Waco, Dallas, so on and so forth. But of course, areas like Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, Fort Sill, Wichita Falls, we're also watching you very closely. Let's not forget San Antonio and Houston as well. That's the wind threat. The hail threat even has a slight risk with it, but this is where I'm really alarmed here. Look at this right here. We have a 10% tornado threat now and a hatched risk, and this is including now the cities of Dallas, Waco, and Austin in this hatched risk. This hatched risk means that there is not only a chance for tornadoes, but for some to be strong to violent, basically above EF2 strength. So this is a very intense severe weather environment, something that's going to have to be watched very closely in the coming hours. All we can do is hope that these storms don't really get to mature into the supercell type setup that we're potentially looking at here. One saving grace that we may still have is that cloud cover, but from what I've seen on the models, it looks like a lot of that's going to be burning off long before these storms fire, unfortunately. So we'll go ahead and look at the models here, look at our parameters, look at our cloud cover, and see if there's any chance at all that we might not have to deal with this tornado outbreak. So in lieu of time, because I noticed my last few videos have been close to 20 minutes a piece, I know not everybody enjoys looking at those length of videos like that, so I'm doing something a little different. I'm looking at this crossover plot here. This crossover plot will indicate the Cape values. These little wind barbs represent our wind shear at the low, mid, and high levels of the atmosphere. So we're getting a little bit of everything all at once here. And in between the areas where I can see like the greatest values is probably going to be the greatest area of concern. So we'll look at a couple of soundings from that. We'll look at the cloud cover as well, and then we'll take a look at the final radar, just try to see if we can speed things along here. Go ahead and sneak a look at the time on the video here. I think we'll be good this time. So we'll move this along here, and it's really not going to be until about maybe 2 p.m. where we start to see those capes really start to pick up here. We're at that point where we're starting to get into that 2,500 plus joules per kilogram here. In some regions, look at that, 2,800 joules per kilogram by about 2 o'clock already. It's about 3 o'clock on the model here. Look at this. Man, this is a very dangerous, almost loaded gun type setup here. Dew points in the mid 70s, which is crazy. Almost certain that we're going to be looking at a potential isolated supercell here, and we aren't even looking at the we aren't really looking at any sort of radar plot or anything like that. This is just looking at the Cape values alone, and this is a pretty alarming setup here. And this still, I would say, is not the peak time for tornadic activity to be with this storm system here. This is getting into the early window here. I think once we get to about maybe 6, 7 o'clock, look at how those Cape values really start to come in now. Look at that. We're getting into the 25, 26, 27, maybe even the 2,800 around here somewhere. And you can almost see it here with the with these wind barbs right in between these two. That's where we're going to be looking at some of the highest Cape values and probably the most dangerous environments here. Again, look at that. 80-degree temperatures, 73 degree dew points, Cape value at 2,700, and plenty of turning of the winds with height. You can almost see it with these wind barbs here. Higher up we go, we can see them continuing to change direction here, especially at the low to mid levels of the atmosphere. Very ominous sign that we could be not only dealing with discrete supercells, but also quasi-linear type supercells, which are really messy thunderstorms that are within a line, but also have the capability of producing tornadoes, just like the storms that will form out ahead of the line. So this threat's going to linger almost into the overnight here before we start to go into a complete linear mode for severe storms, especially towards the southern Gulf part of the Gulf states here. And then once we get into Saturday, we start to really lose our fuel for these storms, and then the setup just kind of fizzles out here, and we're just left with really next to nothing once it gets past the Mississippi River Valley. By the time we get to Alabama, there's not really much of anything left of it. So let's quickly look at the cloud cover real quick, because I should have thought about looking at that to begin with. I would try to compare with the NAM, but the NAM is still loading, and it's going to be a while before that's loaded up. That's why last night's video came up so late, was due to, in large part, see, even now we're only halfway through the NAM model, unfortunately. But let's go ahead and take a look here. In fact, there's not really much cloud cover over the area now, which is kind of alarming. So we're in the early morning hours, and you can even already see little holes here where we're getting sunlight that's breaking through in some of these regions. Now, I do notice some areas that still have about 80 to 90% cloud cover, some places even 100. But once we get to 18Z, though, still getting more breaks in here. But there's still some uncertainty here, which gives me hope that there might be a chance that we may not have as wide of a swath of severe weather coverage. But even so, we'll have to watch this really close and see how things progress from there. From that point on, though, we run into heavy cloud cover around the southeast, which is going to be a huge limiting factor on instability, which is really important for storms. And then from that point on, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and finally take a look at our radar type here. And from there, we should be done, I think. Wonder how long the video is. But we'll probably be just under 18 minutes, maybe. Alright, so here we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the HRRR has to offer us as far as the storm type mode here. And you can already kind of see it just from looking at the radar here. You can see that little bit of moisture being pulled in from the Gulf into this region of Texas here. And once we get to about 2 o'clock, that's when we start seeing these prefrontal supercells, because this is where our cold front is right here. It's back this way. You can even see some snow wrapping around on the back side of this. It might even be the situation where we have severe weather in the early morning hours of Friday, and then for some parts of the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, you're going to get snow on the back side of this, which is crazy. But further up north around here, I think that's when our tornado threat starts to kick off here. In fact, there you go. There's our hordeograph right there. Got our curve. We got our dew points in place. We got our cape in place. We have our temperatures in place. Got a good turning of the winds with height in these levels, in the low levels of the atmosphere in particular. This is gonna get ugly. This looks like it could get ugly and get ugly very quickly. This looks like we're in a quasi-linear type mode here, and then a lot more supercells forming off to the south here. We'll also have to look at this eastern part of Oklahoma here for maybe some potential tornadoes as well. And then about 8-9 o'clock, that's when HRRR will have our main line of storms coming through. Looks like it's going to be a 2-round type of deal. We could be going through a quasi-linear phase, and then we could very well be going through a bow echo phase as well. Then, of course, as I mentioned before, once we get to the Mississippi Valley here, this storm system just kind of falls apart as it ejects to the north and east, but not before bringing some potential rain and snow through the Missouri Valley and maybe even into the UP of Michigan and the Great Lakes. But that's pretty much all I got for this video here. I'll be talking more about the weekend forecast later tomorrow. Might talk about the tropics once more. I do think I'll make one more video about this upcoming, what looks to be a tornado outbreak right now. Unfortunately, I hate to say it again, but that's just the situation we look like we're dealing with right now. But if you liked what I did in this video, definitely drop me a like. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on our severe weather threat tomorrow. Make sure you have a way to get those warnings out, get those warnings to you. Keep your phone ringer on if needed to be, so that way you can get a warning, because I know a lot of phones today have the ability to just automatically send you EAS warnings, and tornado warnings do fall under that realm. But definitely also share this video to anyone in this region that may need it. I'm sure a lot of other there's plenty of other weather YouTubers that will be going live as this event starts to occur here. Unfortunately, I don't have that capability, but we'll work towards that in the future. But anyways, enough rambling from me. This has been Tyler Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys tomorrow for a fact. You guys stay safe, especially if you're in these regions here, especially if you're in also Mexico, Belize, so on and so forth. But either way, you guys have a good night, and I will see you soon.